Hey, folks, welcome to this special edition of Scotch on the Rocks. I'm Deke, and I'm really honored this week to have Cheap Trick historian, the one and only Mr. Robert Lawson, to hop on. And today we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into this fantastic little box set, Live at the Whisky, Cheap Trick from 1977, that was just released, I think maybe 3 weeks to a month ago, and only 2,000 copies. So, Robert, welcome to the show, buddy. Good to see you.
Hey, yeah, good to see you again.
So my question being is, lately I've been obviously reading your book, Still Competition, and a few other Cheap Trick related books. They almost come off kind of a little quirky at times in regards to giving straight answers, which I'm probably sure you're aware of. Do you buy the fact that there's only going to be 2,000 copies of this?
Yeah, kind of. I don't think that's a band decision. I think that's a licensing agreement between Sony Legacy Recordings and Real Gone. You know, Sony owns the tapes, but they licensed it to Real Gone, so it's kind of a limited licensing deal. The 2,000 is probably correct. There's some rumors that there could be a vinyl box set coming out. There's some talk about that, and but that also would be like a limited thing. They might even do, I imagine, less than 2,000 of that. So for fans who didn't pick up this box set, it's really unfortunate because it's a pretty important release for Cheap Trick fans, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And for those that are wondering, they did back in 2020 for Record Store Day put this one out to get you, Live 77, which is accumulation of the 4 shows that are part of this. And yeah, there you go. You got Robert has a copy as well. And the thing is, you can stream this. I know it's up on Apple. You can stream it if you just want to hear. I don't know how many tracks are on here. I'm just going off the top of my head, probably about maybe 20 or 25 or so. And you'll kind of get what's going on about why the Live at the Whisky 77 is such a sought after and finally released live show. So, Robert, in your great book here, Still Competition by Cheap Trick, you talk a bit about Live at the Whisky at the time of the release of the debut album in 77. Now, what are your thoughts? Because, I mean, you have probably heard Live at the Whisky in various incarnations a lot more sooner than I have. To be honest with you, I never even heard it until this Out to Get You came out. And I was like, what? They were sitting on this since 1977? Like, who does that?
Cheap Trick.
There's the answer, folks.
Yeah. So the Whisky recordings are, to me, they're pretty important.
Right.
So the little bit of the history of it is that they released the first album and then they go to LA to record their second album, and they take a break in the middle of the recordings to do these whiskey shows just to get Robin's voice a little rough and just to kind of work out the kinks and stuff like that. So they did 3 nights, 2 sets on June 3rd, 2 sets on June 4th, and 1 set on June 5th. And sometimes that gets a little confusing. People think that there was like a complete, some people think there was only 2 dates. There was definitely 3 dates. And the sets that they were doing were only about an hour long. So they're not like they did 5 full concerts, but they were separate sets that you had to get separate tickets for. And the first 4 sets, so that's June 3rd and 4th, were recorded professionally. And then they just went back to the studio and they finished the second album. They also took a break to go on the Love Gun tour with Kiss, and which is when I first saw them. So that was in July of 1977. Was my first time seeing Cheap Trick. A lot of people's first time seeing Cheap Trick was on the Love Gun tour because it was the largest audiences they kind of played, and they only had the 1 album out. So they complete In Color, and the career just goes from there. And like you said, they sat on these tapes mostly, not totally. In 1996, they put out this box set,
Mm-hmm.
Sex America Cheap Trick. And this has like 5 songs from the Whisky or something, maybe 6 songs, which are incredible. So that was a lot of people who don't collect bootlegs. And of course, this is before streaming and a lot of stuff. This was a lot of people's first opportunity to hear what happened at the Whisky on those nights. And it's incredible. And that was, the thing is, in the liner notes to this, again, this is 1996. In the liner notes, they say, we're thinking of maybe doing a live at the Whisky release.
Yeah.
And then nothing happened.
Yeah. Well, I guess better late than never, right? I guess would be the model for that.
Well, a couple things trickled out. So in 1998, they did the remastered version of their second album in color.
Mm-hmm.
And this has 2 songs from the Whisky.
Oh, okay.
So we're getting a little bit more. And then this is a promo only CD sampler that was available at like Best Buy or something in the States. This has 1 song from the Whisky. Also different from everything that we have so far.
Wow.
And then they did something in Illinois called Trick Fest. And they did 3 of them, like 3 years in a row or something, where fans would come from all over the world, and Cheap Trick would do like an acoustic set and a request set and all kinds of stuff. One of those at the second Trick Fest, there was a contest or something. They gave out something called the Bun tape. And that was a cassette of just a bunch of rarities that Bun threw together. And I have a CDR copy of it here. And this also has 5 songs from the Whisky. So there was stuff leaking out, now and again. And the band, or at least Bun, had said in the past that the Whisky tapes are not good enough to get an actual full release. So what I pointed out in my book, Still Competition, was that when you look at all this stuff, they had like 13 songs altogether from the Whisky that had been officially released. So I dispute that in my book, that the tapes are good enough. There's enough quality recordings from the Whisky that they could release it. And some stuff had leaked. You could listen to it. I think one of the June 4th shows was on YouTube for a while. You could listen to it. So I didn't buy it that the stuff wasn't good enough. It was just a question of some of the sets they had full master tapes, like 24-track recordings of, and some they didn't. Some they had just board tapes. And I guess they didn't want to release something that was only recorded through the soundboard. But some of this stuff that I've just shown you, including some of the stuff on the box set, is from the board tapes, and it sounds great. So,
yeah.
So I think, when my book came out, I was pretty adamant that there's no reason that they can't do a Whisky release, and here we are. So now we have. You're right. They did the album, the double album for Record Store Day, which was a compilation from the first 4 shows. Again, June 3rd and 4th. They also issued that one in Japan. And this has as bonus tracks the songs off the Sex America Cheap Trick box set. So we're getting closer.
Wow.
We're getting closer to having like a lot of Whisky stuff. Until then, pre-orders went live on the Real Gone website for this 4 CD set, which is the complete 2 sets on June 3rd and 2 sets on June 4th releases. So we're in pretty good shape now for Whisky stuff. My book only came out like a couple of years ago, and I was complaining, that they won't do a complete Whisky release. Now I got more Whisky tapes than I can handle.
Well, they probably, maybe one of them read your book and said, maybe we should put this out, and that's the amazing thing about this set is, like Robert said, some of it is soundboard and some of it, but isn't, but it just flows. And me as a listener, I can't even tell the difference because it sounds so amazingly clear.
Well, for the new set, they were able to find the master tapes. So everything on here is from complete 24 track master tapes that were remixed in 2018. So even some of the tracks that previously appeared on some of these other things like this are a lot better. Now, what I found out recently, which there was really kind of no way of knowing before, is that, and I've been listening to a lot of this over the last couple of nights, getting ready to talk to you, is that the songs on this Bun tape, which isn't really in public circulation, those are from the 5th show, and I never knew that. I never had really any information about the 5th show. So when I wrote my book, I think I compared those tracks, so I knew that they were different from the stuff on the box set. So I think the stuff on the box set, if there's like a Please Mrs. Henry from June 3rd, I just assumed that the Please Mrs. Henry on the Bun tape is from June 4th. That's all I had to go on.
Right.
And now I've figured out just over the last couple of days, and I've been talking to some big Cheap Trick fans about it, that the Bun tape is actually a soundboard recording from June 5th. So that's really interesting, because there's some songs like Big Eyes and You're All Talk or something that they did at almost all four of the shows. They're on the Bun tape and they're different versions. So I didn't know that. So it seems consistent that the Bun tape was not professionally recorded. It's just a soundboard tape from Bun's personal collection. But so my book actually needs to be revised a little bit, because now I have more information about this stuff. I mean, I'd love to revise the whole 1977 chapter just to talk about this box set, but we'll settle for talking about it right now with you, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you can always add this conversation as a bonus DVD to your next reissue of Still Competition.
Sure.
I give you the rights to it.
Excellent.
But and that's the real charm with this record, Robert, is for me as a fan and as a listener, is how they were road testing songs that would come later on. Like you said, they were there recording in color at the time in LA of these shows that nobody had heard. And they were even doing tunes from Heaven Tonight, which was still going to be another, year away from being released. So they're trying these songs, and it just blows my mind that you basically caught them right at that time, about 6 weeks after this show was recorded. Like you said, opening for Kiss. I mean, that right there is a mind blower. And, any thoughts, like, just to go back, like, we'll go a little off track here with the Cheap Trick, but any thoughts you want to share about seeing that show, Cheap Trick, opening for Kiss in Winnipeg? Like, did you go in already a Cheap Trick fan, or you had no idea?
I had no idea who they were. I mean, I don't know if most people outside of, Rockford and Chicago areas knew who they were. Like, I don't know if anybody, the first album didn't get a lot of radio play. I doubt it got much radio play in Canada. Yeah. So, no, I had no idea. These goofy guys just come roaring on stage, and they made an impression on me, because I guess a year and a half later or something, when I had a paper route, or I don't know what, I had extra money or something, I bought the Heaven Tonight album,
right?
When that came out, like a year and a half later or something. So it was interesting that technically they're like one of the first bands I ever saw, just because they happened to be opening for Kiss. Right. Now I'm like not only a lifelong Cheap Trick fan, but I'm one of only 3 guys who's ever written a book about Cheap Trick.
That's right. And I think I might have the actual other 2 guys who have written books. So just bear with me. It's this one that just came out that by Brian J. Cramp, which is This Band Has No Past, right? Yeah. And Doug Brood.
Actually, that's not the one I was referring to.
Oh, well, there we go. There, I gave him a plug. What was the other one you were referring to? Oh, wow.
So this is the first book ever written about Cheap Trick. Reputation is a fragile thing, and it's written by a guy who's a friend of mine in Scotland named Mike Hayes. Mm-hmm. And it's more of a biography type book, but it goes through all the way, I guess, to the late 90s or so.
Okay.
Now, both Mike's book and Brian's book, and he's a friend of mine as well. Both of them don't talk about the whiskey shows too much. They just kind of give it a couple of sentences. So when I wrote my book, I definitely wanted to dig deeper and talk about these different tracks, and but of course my book is more focused on kind of the recordings and different albums and stuff like that. So it makes sense. My book definitely has more information about the whiskey tapes, and like I said, now it's unfortunately a little bit out of date because with the new box set I'd have to revise some stuff. But talking about the whiskey, I guess it just starts from when I got the Sex America Cheap Trick book and I heard those songs. They just blew me away, to hear them so young and so angry and so, they have this punk kind of energy.
Right.
And so the whiskey tapes have always just been really important to me, which is why this new 4 CD set is really exciting. I mean, at this point I'd sort of given up. And you're right, they play lots of stuff. They play Big Eyes on all 4 discs, and that was unreleased at the time. Like, they play a lot of the In Color stuff. They do play a couple of songs that would end up on Heaven Tonight, and then they play other stuff that never came out.
That's right.
That, Oh Boy, that was a B-side and stuff like that. Some covers. They do every song from the debut album except for Mandocello, which is incredible because by the time you get to At Budokan, which is of course there's
the debut.
That's it. That's a 10 out of 10 right there.
I read that in your book. You threw down 10 out of 10 on the first 3 albums.
But by the time you get to Budokan, which of course is, one of the greatest live albums of all time and all that stuff. But Budokan has nothing from the first album. There you go.
Yeah, that's right. Never
There's nothing from the debut.
Yeah, that's weird.
Which is, it's really crazy. Like they have 3 studio albums. They put out a live album and put nothing off the first one. So the whiskey box really corrects that because it's got everything except one off the debut, and just lots of oddities. And I don't know, they just sound amazing. I can't believe. I feel sorry for anyone who wasn't able to get it. I know that the 2 LP version that we were showing up, it's also on Spotify.
Yeah.
I don't know if the full box set will end up on a streaming site, but this is incredible stuff, especially for people who either really love the early stuff like I do, or for people who are just more familiar with the later, more commercial kind of stuff to find out where these guys really came from, because they're so, like I said, it's like a punk kind of energy. The guitars are buzzing and loud and noisy. Bun is in terrific shape. The drumming on this thing is incredible. You can tell that a lot of the material is new because Robin makes a couple of mistakes here and there, but that's okay.
That's what it's about.
Sure. It's really like raw and unpolished, and there's no overdubs whatsoever. Unlike on Budokan and most live albums.
Right.
This is really just raw, live, right off the stage. And for people who like the early stuff, this is like a treasure trove of loud, angry, punky Cheap Trick.
And that's the thing. You can scour the track listing on all 4 shows, and even onto the compilation of the double live record. There is no I Want You to Want Me, and there is no Surrender on it. And it goes to show you just how deep of a catalog of tunes they were going, that, love those songs, but it's kind of really cool. And that's the charm of this, is not to hear those songs, to hear others.
Sure. When the double album Out to Get You 1977 came out, I made that point in a few conversations that, for people who think that when you go to see Cheap Trick, they have to play Surrender, and they have to play I Want You to Want Me. I mean, they have to. That's a non-discussion. This proves it, because I've never read a review or heard anyone talk about the Out to Get You live 1977 disappointed that those songs aren't on here. Like, you wouldn't even notice. Like, when you play the thing, you're gonna love it so much and get off so much on the energy and the vitality of it. At the end of it, you're not even going to notice that there's like no Dream Police or something. Like, you're not going to miss those songs at all, because the stuff that they do give you is so great.
And that's the thing. Like, to further your point earlier, where you said if it was somebody's discovery point was in, say, like you said, the more commercial aspect of Cheap Trick, say they discovered Cheap Trick like a lot of people did back when Lap of Luxury came out back in '88. If anybody out there is watching it that is only knows that stuff, cue up the Flame and then cue up right beside it. He's a whore. You'll see, you'll see two different bands, man, and one just kicks the other band right out of the water with it. I mean, I guess I could have picked a better track than the Flame, but everybody knows that, and that was their bounce back single. Which at the time I was happy that they got the single, they got back on the charts. I mean, they earned that right, and everybody was saying, it was 10 years since Budokan they got another hit, and I thought, that was really cool, but the record didn't really kick it for me in overdrive, so to speak. I maybe liked half of it, but for anybody out there, like Robert said, if you haven't heard it, just go on Spotify, Apple, download the Out to Get You. Out to Get You. Sorry, I just brain farted there, from '77, and it gives you a real sense of where these guys were going. I mean, to me, when I listen to this, it's a young band going for the throat.
Yeah.
Jugular, especially. Like they're wicked sounding live. I mean, everybody looks at the shtick, of Rick Nielsen looking like some kind of patient coming out of mental institute running around the stage back then in his gimmick, and Bunny Carlos looking like an accountant back on the drums. But, listen to Bunny Carlos, especially on Clock Strikes 10. I mean, listen to those drums. I know he is just pounding hard, and and a lot of people miss that. They look with their eyes, but they don't listen with their ears, and this set proves that these guys had chops. I mean, like Tom Peterson's bass even sounds massive on it. I mean, he's not there. He's right up there, like right up there with the guitars, man. It's so great. I mean, whenever I'm out walking, just listening to the audio of it, I'm cranking it, man, because it's just like, I feel like I'm back in that smoke-filled whiskey, Like it's great.
It's interesting too. Tom, at this point, he doesn't have a 12-string bass. That instrument hadn't been invented yet.
Wow!
They hadn't created that monster yet. So he's playing, I think, all of this on just a regular 4-string Gibson Firebird. But yeah, he sounds great. The mix of it is terrific. Rick's guitar is really loud. You can hear a lot of the, he's always been a very sloppy player because he's jumping around and singing all these weird backing vocals and stuff like that. But I was listening to a couple of tracks on headphones last night, and I could even, hear Robin kind of squeaking in the background a little bit. His guitar was kind of mirroring, he's kind of doing some doodling around, what Rick does, because Rick covers, between Rick and Tom, they cover a lot of space. And then Bun gets in there. And Bun is a really, especially at his peak, which is 77 to mid 80s or so, he's a really inventive and colorful drummer. He's all over the place. He kind of plays almost like a Keith Moon, where he's doing a lot of different things. He's not just a straight 4/4 time kind of guy, which is really interesting to me. I like drummers like that. I like drummers who play a lot of different stuff. Not necessarily that he's always super busy, but he just changes it up. He's just not playing the simple backbeat. He'll throw in lots of little things in there. And so he's really great to listen to. Yeah, Tom, they're all a lot of fun to listen to. And hearing Robin, his voice gets a little hoarser as the nights go on, which is to be expected. And that's what they wanted before they started recording. But, when they first announced this box set and they said they were going to make 2,000 of them, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe that was too many. I didn't know how many people would care about 4 CDs of Cheap Trick at the Whisky from 1977. Obviously, I was first in line to pick it up since I've been waiting for it for years. But I didn't know if 2,000 was, and it sold out really, really quickly. And I know some friends online who are, kind of disappointed that they weren't even able to get it. So 2,000 apparently was not enough.
Well, I got lucky. When I read about it, I went on Amazon here in Canada, and they had 2 copies. So I pre-ordered one, and I sat on that pre-order until it. And I thought, maybe Amazon will say da da da, and then when come release day they didn't get it. I've seen that happen where it's all of a sudden it's temporarily unavailable.
Right.
So, but I sat on that pre-order, and I'm really glad I didn't cancel it, because next thing you know, I seen mine was sent out, and then the temporary unavailable. So somebody else in Canada or somewhere got the 2 copies that were available on Amazon. So to me, that was like striking gold.
Yeah, I know some people in the UK who had that unfortunate scenario happen to them, where they pre-ordered it off Amazon UK, and then right on like the day of release or the day before, all of a sudden it's unavailable, which is really, really unfortunate. I pre-ordered directly from the Real Gone website,
right?
And I got dinged with a customs charge when the thing came over the border into Canada, but I'm okay with it.
I figured you would be.
What am I gonna
send
do?
it back?
Yeah,
I want it.
An extra $12 or something. I'm gonna, this is like a really, like a dream release for me. Like I said, I wanted something like this for so long. I can't believe it finally came out. I would like to think that somebody read my book and thought, well, maybe we should do that. I have a whole file folder here just based on information about the Whiskey 77 shows.
No kidding.
That's how much I'm into the whiskey shows.
That's awesome. So for you, folder. And for a lot of us, like myself included, my introduction to Cheap Trick was like many at the time. I was probably 12 when Budokan came out in 79, or just about to turn 12, right? So I was on board a little later once the commercial, and I started seeing their ads in Cream and Circus, and I thought, wow, who are these guys? And whoa, they're opening for Kiss. Well, then they must be all right.
Right.
And I got on board with them, and I've followed them right through since that day. And that's the thing I have to add, people, is seek this book out, Still Competition, Robert's book. And I'm just not saying that because he's here. This is such a great read. And the thing is, if you're looking for sex, drugs, and rock and roll, no, it's not in here. As Robert explained earlier, it's a book about facts, about where the albums charted, the reissues, the bonus tracks, the behind the scenes songs that made it, didn't make it. Like, it's all in here, like right up to 2017. And it's a highly recommended read. It's one I read, and then I've gone back and skimmed over, like, for today, like for Cheap Trick. And then about 4 or 5 months ago, I finally got around to picking up on vinyl All Shook Up. And then I thought, geez, I wonder what Robert said about it. So then you go to this, right? And and he pulls no punches. He says how he feels, and if he likes the Cheap Trick album, he likes it, and if not, and that's okay too. And it's why I sugarcoat everything. I mean, I think we can both go on record and say that the Doctor was kind of like, so the Doctor album was a little different, but and that's the great thing. Now, on the other hand, you can get this book, This Band Has No Past, by Robert's pal Brian J. Cramp, and it's also a very good read. But I will tell everybody out there, it's very detailed. It's like, when I read this thing, I almost need peace and quiet, because he talks to Ken Adamany, Cheap Trick's former manager, as well as Bunny Carlos, which is awesome. So to me, it almost makes it a legitimate read. And he talks to everybody that came into circles with Cheap Trick when those guys went and moved over into Germany and England and all over Europe and stuff. He talks to guys that were living with them, and he talks to the former singers, and that they kind of, was it Randy Xeno Hogan? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Talks to him in depth, and like, he really did his homework. And the neat thing about it is the book ends right at the Budokan album.
Right.
And there is some, I know I haven't finished it yet, because as you can see, I think I got about another 100 pages to go, but so far it's a very great backstory. And one other thing I'll add, Rob, is that they worked for their success, like through the various incarnations and playing all the shitholes in around their areas. And they gradually built up that base. I mean, it's a very very detailed book. So you got the best. You got this one with the actual story, and then you got this for all the studio album breakdowns. And same thing with Brian's book so far. I mean, he doesn't get into the drugs or any of that shit with those guys. It's just everybody, how they all fit into the big family tree known as Cheap Trick. So yeah, that's my plug for you two guys. Check in the mail.
Brian's book, you're right. It's very, very detailed. I wrote a really positive review for him on Amazon.
Nice.
His book is like right up my alley because I like a lot of details, which people always say about my book. But he goes really, really deep. If you're a casual fan, you might not be able to get into his book too much. I think there's like 2 or 3 pages just talking about how the famous Cheap Trick logo was created.
That's right.
Which is amazing. Like he actually talks about what kind of photocopy machine they used to get that bleeding logo kind of thing. I never knew that.
No, neither did I. And that's
nobody did.
You got it. Yeah, you got to focus when you're reading this book because it's very, very detailed with so many facts. I mean, it's great. It's that basically he's talking to everybody that was there.
Yeah, and those early lineup changes are really interesting to me as well. So it's great that he talked to Zeno and some of those guys. It's a really, really great book, but it's definitely not for the faint-hearted.
No,
you got to be hardcore for that one. But it's great. It's
and you know what? And I'm like you. I like books with detail, and like I said, for me, that book it's legit because Bunny Carlos is all through that book.
Yeah,
with his quotes and whatnot. So to me, it's like if the other guys aren't going to get on board with it, whatever, that's their deal. But check out that book on Amazon, folks. And before we wrap up, I have to mention that not only has Robert written this book, but he's also written about his pal. About Dan's passing a few months ago. But if you're ever looking in the market for a great book on all of Nazareth's albums and singles and whatnots, just like the Cheap Trick book, the exact same setup. It just focuses on Nazareth. And for me, my favorite Nazareth album of all time is Snaz. My discovery point, that was my entry point into to Nazareth. And one more book that Robert has written is Wheatfield Empire. Listener's Guide to the Guess Who. Now, I'm going to be honest with you folks. I'm not a huge Guess Who fan, but this is kind of a neat read to learn about the Guess Who because being Canadian, you know that they're icons. And Robert has a personal connection with Burton Cummings, and who I believe almost endorsed this book pretty much. Like kind of said, I'm cool with it. I'm not going to sue you. So.
No, when it came out, he wrote some really nice stuff on his Facebook page about it. I think he actually said he learned some stuff about the Guess Who in it, which was that's probably the best compliment I could get.
Hey, no kidding. That really happened? Well, I guess it did. And you're right. That is the best comment. And that's the thing. Like I always say, whether I have like my pal Brent Jensen on or guys like Sean Kelly, support the local book authors, like our Canadian homeboys like Robert, Sean, Brent, and get their stuff, whether it's through them, through their Facebook, their social medias, or Amazon even. Just buy it, man. It's just these are coming from guys who are fans of music, and that's what it's about. And like I said earlier in the show, there is no bigger Cheap Trick historian than I know of than the guy sitting with me today. So, Robert, thank you so much for coming on.
It was good. I like it. Always like talking about Cheap Trick.
You know what? I would love to have you back on, and maybe we could do a bit of a deep. I'd like to talk to you. Basically, speaking of All Shook Up and the One-on-One album, I'd like to have you back and focus on those two records because One-on-One especially is one of my fave albums of theirs. So don't want to get too far into that, but like I said, I really want to thank you for coming on today and talking about this. So if you're one of the lucky ones like us, enjoy. So Robert, thanks, buddy.
Thanks.
And
we'll talk again soon.
You bet. Just stay on. I'm going to end the recording. Okay, bud? All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this special episode of Scotch on the Rocks with Cheap Trick guy, Robert Lawson. And this is Deke signing off, and we'll talk to you guys And folks, later.